humanity knew that the day would come, the day when we made first contact with an alien species. The problem was when the Ryloxean Grand Commander Sci-fi appeared on the monitor and announced Earth's annexation as part of their expanding galactic empire. Besides the hideous look of the gray-skinned and horned creatures with red eyes, it was the unwavering nature of their demands that intimidated the people of the Earth. According to Sci-fi, there were only two options for humanity: surrender or die. Although such scenarios had been written about by generations of science fiction authors, deep down inside, mankind never expected it to happen this way. This was an advanced civilization with the technology to journey between stars. Not only that, they had also encountered countless other races. It was unnecessary to come to Earth with such a belligerent attitude. But that's how it went. Sci-fi spoke of his invasion fleet nearing the solar system and that he would be to Earth in only 5 days. The humans were to make arrangements for his conquering arrival. "We have no choice," said Harlan Belmont, the President of the United States. As the country with the planet's most powerful military force, all eyes had turned to him at the outset of the crisis. "We can't match their technology, and besides that," Grand Commander Sci-fi spoke of the Ryloxean Empire. "They have already conquered other worlds across the galaxy. If we resist, all it would do is get us all killed." "I agree," said Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Daniel Ross. "It would be wise to give in to their demands, at least until we learn about our enemy. At this point, all we know of them is what we've seen on the video screens." Marin McCarthy, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, laughed. "And from what we can tell, that's all they know of us, as well. From what Sci-fi said, Earth merely lay within the bounds of the space which they unilaterally annexed." Admiral Ross turned to the aging politician. "Do you see an advantage in that?" he asked the Prime Minister. "Possibly," she answered. "They can't know anything about our military might and what a unified planet could bring to bear on them." Admiral Ross grunted. "Of course you're right. The only problem is the aliens would always control the high ground of space, and with only a week before they arrive, it doesn't give us any time to develop the technology or deploy assets that would be required to change that. I believe the President is right. We need to submit to their demands at least at first. Humans have always been known for our propensity to resist, and in a variety of fashions. I say we spend this week stockpiling supplies, weapons, and even personnel for the long underground resistance movement we know is coming." President Belmont shook his head in disgust. "And in the meantime, we have to start kissing the ass of this obnoxious and ugly alien. Hell, if anything, why couldn't we be conquered by some good-looking aliens, rather than these devil-looking assholes?" A week later, the Ryloxean fleet arrived near the planet Earth. The bulk of the fleet stayed back at a safe distance as scanners assessed the capacities of this strange new world. Sci-fi and his people knew nothing of the natives, except that they were called humans. He had studied their images on the communication monitor, seeing them to be smooth-skinned and soft-looking creatures, and when they spoke, he saw flattened teeth rather than the needle-sharp fangs of the Ryloxeans. He grinned maliciously. They will make easy targets, and possibly even tasty meals. After all, the primary motivation for the Ryloxean expansion across the galaxy was the never-ending quest for food. But now he was getting ahead of himself. First, he had a planet to subdue. So far, the humans had done everything asked by the Ryloxeans, appearing unwilling to put up a fight. That was too bad. Ryloxeans cherished a good fight. Perhaps Sci-fi would initiate such an event, whether warranted or not. His crews would enjoy the physical combat. "Where have they chosen for us to land?" Sci-fi asked his second-in-command, Subcommander Garax. On the main screen of the bridge of C4's flagship, the Intimidator, the Grand Commander saw a large rectangular expanse of green locked within a forest of tall buildings located on a small, oblong-shaped island and included within an even larger conglomeration of more urban congestion. "These natives are prodigious builders," Garax observed. "Their military would be substantial, as well." "However, Sub-Commander, they do not maintain a space fleet," Sci-fi pointed out. "Because of that, it will make for an easy conquest." C4 and Garax observed the long-range image of the landing area. It was a park, with a large lake at one end. The camera zoomed in even more, giving the Ryloxeans a better view of the entire human being. They were bipedal, as were the Ryloxeans, yet of a slimmer build. They moved with a fluidity that meant they would be agile. But still, they were not as robustly built as the Ryloxeans. Staging warrior games between his people and the humans would be a fun affair, and sure to be popular throughout the Empire. From the scanners, Sci-fi already knew the atmosphere was within tolerances for his species, which meant this particular world would be suitable for colonization. After the native population was dealt with, again, Sci-fi may get the war he was itching for. So far, the Ryloxean expansion had progressed with relative ease, mainly because of his people's advanced space technology. Most civilizations they encountered had not mastered star travel, although most had developed weapons of war, including nuclear. Detectors picked up a high concentration of residual radiation in the atmosphere, meaning the humans had also developed weapons of mass destruction. That could be a problem, but nothing that couldn't be overcome. If the humans used nuclear devices against the invaders, they would destroy more land than they protected. Eventually, it would reach a point of diminishing returns. Sci-fi would have his planet, and in the long run, there was nothing the humans could do to stop him. Up to this point, Sci-fi had only been in contact with the leaders of Earth. Now he made their arrival more generally known by broadcasting a system-wide message that appeared on all video screens currently active across the planet. Attention, Earthlings. We are the Ryloxeans, and we demand your immediate and unconditional surrender. We have been in contact with your leaders, and they have agreed to our conditions. Therefore, resistance is futile. Your planet is now under Ryloxean control. C4 would wait a while before landing, letting panic spread like wildfire across the planet. He was sure there would be resistance. There always was. What he didn't want was for the governments he'd already negotiated with to be overthrown. That would add a complication. Instead, he hoped for a quick capitulation from the populace, followed by the Ryloxean suppression measures. The humans wouldn't like them, but by then it would be too late. It is time, said Garax. Estimated time to landing, 30 local minutes. President Belmont was with an entourage of world leaders, standing off to one side of the vast grassy field of Central Park in New York City. There were 35 people in attendance, with the vast majority of world leaders sequestered in bunkers around the world. If the aliens came out shooting, only a limited number of leaders would be lost. But if that happened, it would only be the beginning of the end for the human race. I have a bad feeling about this, said Speaker of the House Linda Garcia. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. You mean leaving ourselves exposed like this? The president asked nervously. Belmont had never served in the military, although if he had, it was doubtful he would have served in any of the few hot zones around the world, experiencing real combat. Because of that, he didn't know whether or not he was a brave man. He thought he was, but one never knew until the chips were down. And now, high above in the blue October sky, he noticed the blazing landing jets of the alien warship as it dropped toward the surface. His heart pounded up in his throat, and he felt slightly dizzy. God, please don't let me faint, he prayed softly under his breath. Grand Commander Sci-fi watched as the surface grew closer. He was impressed by the gigantic size of the buildings the Intimidator was dropping between. On Rylox, they would compete for the tallest structures on the planet. And there were hundreds of them. And then the ship dropped to tree level, again, trees of gigantic scale. For some strange reason, Sci-fi was feeling nervous, was it? It was such a strange sensation that he wasn't sure what he felt. The ship eventually settled to the ground, and C4 and his command delegation moved to the side exit hatch. The universal translators had already absorbed the native languages, of which there were hundreds, but had focused on the dominant English for this encounter. He was ready. His people were ready. It was time to claim a new world for the Empire. What the fuck is this? Linda Garcia asked incredulously. Is it a shuttle? President Belmont had no answer. Instead, he led the small entourage toward the now open door of the starship, about to begin the most important conversation in the history of mankind. Grand Commander Sci-fi led his team out the doorway and down the ramp, stepping into a forest of green that came to mid-calf, even higher in some places. It seemed odd that the humans would not have prepared the landing area better, instead leaving it as a covering of unmanicured overgrowth. And then he saw the humans approaching. He and Garax stared open-mouthed, slowly tilting their heads back while casting their gaze ever more skyward the closer the natives came. Grand Commander, Garax called out beside him, panic in his voice. Silence. We must not show weakness. But, sir. I know, C4 gasped. You gotta be kidding me, Linda Garcia said, her face conveying as much shock as did the aliens standing before her. They're fucking runts. President Belmont couldn't believe what he was seeing. Instead of a horde of rampaging, gray-skinned devils, he now saw a gaggle of 8-inch-tall, gargoyle-looking beasts, almost small enough to be crushed under his foot. These are the aliens we're supposed to be surrendering to, Garcia asked incredulously. That ain't going to happen. President Belmont was experiencing a different emotion. It was one of humor. He stepped forward and bent down on one knee, fighting the urge to extend his hand and scratch under the chin of the diminutive alien as one would scratch under a dog's muzzle. Instead, he merely greeted, "How you doing there, little fella? Welcome to Earth." He leaned in closer, until his gigantic face was about a foot from the terrified-looking alien, his pleasant countenance now changing to a look of stern determination. "Now, what's all this bullshit about conquering us?" The alien leader's cipher stepped back in fear, bumping into the others behind him, half of which had already run back into their tiny, 20-foot-long toy starship. He tripped and fell on his behind, which allowed the president to move a little closer until he was casting an ominous shadow over the tiny creature. I am Grand Commander Sci-fi, the tiny beast said in a tinny voice that betrayed the heavy bass of the communication speakers in their previous conversations. "I demand your immediate surrender." For an answer, Belmont scooped the toy alien up in his hand before he stood, carrying the tiny creature to a height that would kill if the president dropped him. He squeezed slightly, hearing Grand Commander C4 squeal like a pig. "Oh, I'm sorry," the president said. "Does that hurt? I must not realize my own strength. Now let's have a talk about this whole surrendering thing. I believe the human race would like to renegotiate the terms. What do you think of that, Grand Commander Sci4?" The tiny beast was rapidly nodding his head. "Of course, whatever you say. The Ryloxeans are open to new talks. Perhaps something a little less hostile and more cooperative." "That would be fine with me," Belmont said. "Now why don't you come with me? We have a building called the United Nations. We can work out the terms over there, and you might enjoy a tour of one of Earth's greatest cities. Would you like that, little fella?" Belmont reached over with his other hand and gently rubbed the alien's scaly head between the tiny horns. "And aren't you just the cutest little devil I've ever seen?" This has been an original story by T.R. Harris. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. And be sure to check out all of my 70+ full-length novels available on Amazon, or you can check out my website at bytrharris.com. Thanks for watching.